Former President Trump and his allies are giving evolving and sometimes conflicting defenses about the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago. So what's the truth? Here now, CNN fact checker Daniel Dale. Daniel, great to have you here. Let's just start with one of the things that Trump himself said. He said, essentially, Barack Obama did the same thing. He said, quote, President Barack Obama kept 33 million pages of documents. How much of them classified? How many of them pertain to nuclear? Word is lots. What's the truth here, Daniel?
There's no truth to that. And John, you don't have to take my word for it because the National Archives and Records Administration issued a statement totally debunking this. They said that they, the National Archives and Records Administration, maintain exclusive legal and physical custody of the Obama-era documents. They said they were the ones who took about 30 million documents to the Chicago area, to their own facility, not like Obama's house. And they made clear that the classified documents were sent to another facility. So basically nothing Trump said in that Truth Social post was actually accurate.
And Trump is also saying, Daniel, they could have had these documents. All they had to do was ask. Did they ask?
Not only did the Department of Justice ask Brianna, but the National Archives and Records Administration had been asking for months before that. It's not like the DOJ, FBI just showed up with a search warrant. This issue dates back to 2021. It's been an ongoing saga with a lot of communication back and forth. And the DOJ also showed up with a grand jury subpoena in June, after which Trump lawyers signed a document claiming that there were no more classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. And according to DOJ and the FBI, that was not true.
There are some within Trump world trying to shift blame here to the GSA, the General Services Administration. What about that, Daniel?
So it's hard to know what happened behind the scenes. The claim is that the GSA put some wrong stuff in boxes by mistake. It's their fault. Well, I don't know who put what in boxes, but I do know the GSA issued a statement saying, look, we contract to wrap up the things that the president says are necessary to wind down his office, but it is the sole responsibility of the president and his staff as to deciding what actually goes in those boxes. It's not us that makes the decision about what to pack up and what not to.
And lastly, what about this claim by Donald Trump that all the White House documents he brought with him to Mar-a-Lago had been declassified?
So you've been talking about this earlier on the show. I'd say a few things. Number one, Trump and his team have presented no evidence there was actually some sort of declassification order. And I can tell you multiple former administration officials, including former National Security Advisor John Bolton, said they'd never heard anything like that. Number two, as a previous guest discussed, it's very much unclear as to whether such a broad order, like everything I take home would be declassified, would be considered legitimate by the courts, other government authorities. And I think there's also another important point, and that's the three statutes, the three laws that were mentioned in that search warrant do not hinge on whether the documents someone possesses, allegedly improperly, were actually classified. So this issue of classification is important for various reasons, but it may not be the deciding factor in terms of whether, say, former President Trump gets charged with something.
Daniel Dale, this is super helpful. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. All right, let's dig into the receipts this morning. What exactly do we know from the documents we have now seen? Here now, CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Elie Honig. Elie, it's great to see you this morning. Look, where are we? I mean, what do we know about where the FBI searched and what they found?
Yeah, John, this is a fascinating new document. It's only 7 pages long, by the way, and as we discussed throughout last week, it certainly does not answer all of our questions, but it gives us some crucial insights into the Mar-a-Lago search. First, whenever you do a search as a prosecutor, you have to tell the judge where you're going to search. They did not, in this case, say we want to look at all of Mar-a-Lago. They really focused on the offices, the 45 office, Donald Trump, 45th president, and the working areas that Donald Trump had access to, F. POTUS there, meaning former president of the United States. Now, they do not specify this safe that Donald Trump says was opened up, but it doesn't matter because this safe, as long as it's in one of these areas, that's fair play. There's nothing special legally about a safe. It's just a locked cabinet. You can't keep things from the FBI by putting it behind a lock. Now, we also have a better sense of what items the FBI took out of Mar-a-Lago because we've now seen this receipt for property, which is just that. There are about 33 items and sub-items laid out in general. A lot of them just say generically, box labeled this or that, box of documents. Now, this is not the FBI trying to be opaque or trying to hide anything. They make this document on the spot. They haven't had a chance yet to go through it. But the most important thing, I think, in this whole set of documents is that some of those boxes included classified TS, SCI documents. What does that mean? These are the levels of classification. Top secret SCI, secure compartmented information. That is the highest level of classification. They found documents marked that in Mar-a-Lago. Keep that in mind when we hear about this new letter where the lawyers said, we do not know of any classified information. Finally, John, we do know that a lawyer for Donald Trump, Christina Bobb, was present at Mar-a-Lago and received this document because she signed it 6:19 p.m. So she was there for the search on the day of the search, and they gave her this receipt.
All right, what's not seen here?
Yeah, well, the main thing we have not yet seen in the documents is the affidavit. And this is the big one. This is the document where DOJ lays out the narrative establishing probable cause approved by a federal magistrate judge. Donald Trump does not have that. Only prosecutors have it, and the court has it under seal.
All right, you talked about the laws that were part of this document that DOJ said they had probable cause to think might have been broken.
Yeah, a couple of really important qualifications before we get into this. This is probable cause. That is a lower standard than beyond a reasonable doubt, which you would need to charge and convict somebody. The other thing, these crimes are not alleged as to any particular person. The DOJ has not alleged that Donald J. Trump committed these crimes, just that these crimes were committed. Now, here's the statute, 793, 2071, and 1519. What do those numbers mean? Okay, Section 793. The thing that has drawn so much attention is that it is part of the Espionage Act. It is. Now, that's a big word. It makes people think of cinematic movie craft, James Bond or Jason Bourne, take your pick. But this specific statute applies to the mishandling of defense information. Anyone who takes, transmits, or mishandles defense information, knowing or believing it could harm national security. So it's not cloak and dagger stuff, but it's really important for our national security. The second one is destruction or concealment of government documents, federal government documents. This is the one that on the face of it says a person, if they're convicted, can be disqualified from holding office. But I put maybe in there because we don't know whether that's actually constitutional. And finally, obstruction, which means willfully getting rid of documents or tampering with documents with intent to keep them away from investigators. Important to note, John, all three of these, none of them have anything to do with whether any of these documents were ever classified or declassified.
What's next?
So what's next could be nothing, actually. Technically, we won't see any further action on this case on the legal docket unless and until DOJ brings criminal charges against any person. If they do that, then this affidavit, the big document, will go to that person so they can challenge the search. But if not, John, we may not learn a whole lot through the formal legal channels. We will continue to learn things from our reporters.
Ellie, I got to let you go here, but some members of Congress calling to see some of these documents that DOJ, have you ever heard of investigators showing their documents to politicians in the middle of an investigation?
I've never heard of that, and as a prosecutor, I would have fought that till my last breath. It's disastrous for a criminal investigation to open it up to Congress.